This is the Sic Em Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at alansamuelsdcj.com. The Sic Em Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics. Now, here are your hosts, Brooke Bednarz and the voice of the Bears, John Morris.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Sic Em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. We're glad you're with us this week. Thanks to Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, our presenting sponsor for the Sic Em Podcast. John Morris and Brooke Bednarz, and joined by Brooke. Never in the history of the Sic Em Podcast have we had a repeat guest, but if we're ever going to do it, this is the time to do it.
Yes, it is. About time.
It is perfect timing. Our very first guest on the Sic Em Podcast was one Mack Rhoades. That was back on April 9th. And here we are. Think about how things have changed and everything we've been through. And we welcome Mack, Baylor's Vice President and Director of Athletics, back with us this week. Do you even remember April 9th and how much ground you've covered since then to today?
Barely. I just know that there was an April 9th,
yes,
right? And it was episode 1, and today is episode 19.
Yes,
yeah.
Very good.
So I pay attention.
Yeah.
But, no, it seems like forever. It really does. So, but I look forward to this right here.
We appreciate your time. It's stating the obvious that you're very busy. You got a lot of irons in the fire, but we appreciate you being with us. And I know Baylor family will enjoy hearing from you. So many things have happened since then, are still happening. This is a big week as we record it on August 18th with students coming back on campus and classes beginning here at Baylor next Monday.
Yeah, we think about playing sports, and specifically when we think about football, there's two really hurdles in front of us. There's the contact, right, and practice with contact. Will that impact the positivity rate of COVID within the team, right? And so I think we're all learning and waiting to see, if there is an impact, and we're certainly hopeful that there's not. But then the other big piece of it is the return of the student body to campus, right? And how just the integration, student athletes within the general student body, right? What will that look like, right? And how that impacts again the positivity rate of COVID. So, I think we're all waiting to see. And, this institution, Baylor's done such a great job, led by Dr. Livingstone in terms of just taking every precautionary measure possible in terms of the return of the general student population, whether it's, the face covering piece, it's the social distancing, those in-person classes. They've been very, very careful. Our provost, Dr. Nancy Brickhouse, in terms of, just making sure that in a classroom you can social distance, that professors are safe, students are safe. But again, remains to be seen until we get everybody gathered together.
There's been a lot of changes since we last spoke with you. How do you feel as though the football program specifically has handled all the obstacles that it has had to face so far to get to where we are today?
Yeah, Brooke, it's a great question. And, I think, you can't have the conversation without starting with Coach Aranda, right? And you think about, first-time head coach, that's a lot, right? You're drinking through a fire hose, really, and then all of a sudden now let's throw on this layer of COVID-19, and he was just here long enough in person with our student athletes, right? Just to almost become acquainted with them, but really nothing more. And then you're trying to build that trust. You're trying to build that relationship now from distance, right? And having to do it through Zoom calls, and the staff, the same thing, right? Certainly there was some continuity with some staff members when you think about Coach McGuire and Coach Wetzel and Coach Bell and some others, but the rest of the staff was new, and so you're trying to form those relationships now, and so I think he's done a really tremendous job of being very intentional, of trying to grow those relationships while they were apart. Wasn't just football. In fact, it was probably more about relationships and developing trust, right, rather than the football piece. And so when we finally gathered together, I think we're in a good place. But this is still really, really hard. And just again the uncertainty of it, the uncertainty of whether you're going to play, not going to play, the uncertainty of how many times am I going to be tested, right? The uncertainty of if am I a primary contact? Do I have to go into quarantine? Do I have to go sit in a hotel room or go sit in a dorm room for 14 days by myself? So it's a lot to manage, and it's a lot to handle. And I would say just in general, really proud Coach Aranda, our staff, but also our student athletes, right? They have done a really, really good job. And, we've talked about, 1, protecting themselves, 2, protecting their team, but 3, also there's a responsibility to the community and to protect the community and to just make sure that, as best we can, right, that we don't do anything to spread the disease. And, here's what's so hard, and this is the reality of it, to be quite frank, is we're asking 18 to 22-year-olds not to be 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
we really are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about parties and those things, but, we want to gather, right? I mean, to gather is biblical, right?
Yeah.
And what we're saying is, sorry, you can't do that. Or if you do it, you have to do it with face covering. You have to do it 6 feet apart. You have to have washed your hands. And so I'm just, again, we haven't been perfect, but I'm really proud of our student athletes, and not just football. All of the student athletes that we've onboarded to date: volleyball, soccer, cross country, men's and women's basketball. They've done really a good job of being responsible.
We got news from the Big 12 recently that we are marching forward. We have plans to play a schedule this fall. In the Big 12, it's the 9+, the conference games plus 1 non-conference game. That came last week, and I think it really was a boost of energy that everybody got around here, at least, and around the Big 12, that they feel safe enough to go ahead and play with a schedule this fall.
Yeah, again, we're obviously listening to our medical experts, right? And at least up to this point in time, our team physicians, our doctors, have told us that they still feel it's safe to proceed and continue to move forward. And every day, we're evaluating and we're being cautious, right? And right now, we're cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to kick off, and yet we're not so entrenched as to, if something happens and our doctors say, hey, it's not safe, then it's not safe, right? And then we don't play. But right now we feel good about it. As I mentioned, we need to see how the return of the general student body, how that impacts everything, and I think it's something that hopefully we can manage, and I think we will manage, and so there's some excitement, but there also has to be some reality to it as well, that we still have this roadway in front of us that we're going to have to navigate before we actually kick off on September 12th.
2 weeks ago, we had Coach Aranda on, and we talked with him about, kind of flexibility being the key word throughout all of this. Everything's very fluid and having to stay flexible. Have you been able to talk with the team and kind of see how they're feeling about all of this, and how how they're handling being flexible and getting told the positive news, like John, you just said, of, hey, we are marching forward, but at the same time having to be realistic and stay smart, like you just said.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing for them is just the uncertainty. And Coach Aranda's right. We talked about flexibility, adaptability, all of those things, right? And I think, I did address our team last Friday in the morning and talk to them about just, again, some of the realities that we have in front of us. But talk to them about, they have and they play a big part in whether or not, we get there, right? They have questions. They have questions about the health and the safety. They have questions about eligibility. What happens, and if I'm a student athlete, I'm asking the same questions. What happens if we play and we only get 4 games in and then we have to stop, right? Does that burn a year of eligibility, and those are all great questions, and we're waiting to hear back from the NCAA, and hopefully this Friday we hear back from them definitively on the eligibility piece. And I know it's not a question that you asked, but I'm hoping that the NCAA comes back and says, hey, this year really is a free year for everybody. And there's some positive and great positive to that, but there's also some negativity to it on the back end, right? Having to manage rosters in the future, all of that. But I do think that's the right decision. And so again, student athletes, they've had a lot of questions, but I think for the most part they are managing the uncertainty really, really well. And I'll tell you, in terms of the football program, it's a close group. It's a close-knit group. I think we've got some great leadership, and so I think that's helped. And again, I think the way Coach Aranda has managed all of this, they trust him, and hopefully they trust us, administratively, that we're looking out for their best interest.
Really got my attention last week when Commissioner Bob Bowlesby made the announcement that the Big 12 was moving forward. He said, as part of his teleconference, that he had talked to student athletes at every school. I think that's huge. Who from Baylor did the commissioner talk to, and what level of importance do you put on that? Him going to the student athletes to get their input.
Yeah, I think one that the level of importance is huge. Right. And so, within the Big 12 conference, we've got a football working group that I chair. And so we've actually had 2 now Zoom calls with 20 football student athletes throughout the league, 2 representatives from each team. And so, the very first one that we had our physicians on, the medical or the lead medical director and an outside physician. And I thought it was a terrific call. It was a call that was, supposed to last 1 hour, and I think it ended up taking 2 hours. And, the student athletes were terrific. They asked unbelievable questions of our doctors. And then most recently, I think it's now been maybe 2 weeks ago, we had a second call. Charlie Brewer and Terrell Bernard represent Baylor on the call, and again, really talk through some of the eligibility questions, the financial aid questions, and then we'll get back on again a third time with those student athletes here to talk about just some of the new medical protocol that we'll begin to implement as we move forward. And so I think, those conversations have been extremely valuable. We're certainly being transparent as we can be, right? Share the information that we know. So we need to continue to do that. And if I'm a student athlete, right, I'm seeking information. I want to know, good, bad, or indifferent. And so we need to continue to do that.
Another part that Commissioner Bowlesby spoke about was the surveillance testing that the entire Big 12 is taking part in, as well as the non-conference opponents. They'll have to match that in order to compete. But just from you, can you kind of walk us through what that's been looking like so far, and if any of that's going to change as we, continue to move forward?
Yeah, initially, the A5 came out with their surveillance testing protocol, and it was really once a week and 72 hours before game time, right? And then as we go through practice, for example, again, when we think about football, right now we're surveillance testing. We're doing that twice a week, et cetera. But as we move into the season, we'll go with a protocol where we're testing 3 times a week. One of those will have to be at least a PCR test. We'll do something on Sunday, the day after a game. Then we'll do a second test 72 hours before game time, and then we'll do one 24 hours before game time. And so got to be really obviously careful in terms of that test on that Friday 24 hours before, because you need to have the results right back in time to be able to certify and make sure, again, when both teams match up, right, we have a group of student athletes, coaches, staff, right, that are all infectious free, and so that's where we'll head. We'll mandate, for instance, the non-conference opponent on the 12th. They'll be mandated to follow that protocol. If for some reason they weren't able to do that last minute, then we wouldn't play the game. So I think that's. I think that's really, really important as we're moving forward. There was a lot of conversation and discussion about heart and, impacting the heart. And, Baylor's been blessed to have a relationship with a Dr. Ackerman from the Mayo Clinic. And he's been terrific and actually has now somewhat become a national spokesperson. And, this is his wheelhouse. He deals with competitive elite athletes, this age group, and myocarditis, and certainly has studied COVID and how it impacts. And so I think we have a really great set of protocol in place if we have a student athlete that tests positive. There'll be blood work, EKG, echocardiogram, right? And then after you do those 3, then potentially, right, there could be a necessity for a cardiac MRI. So I think we're being really, really careful, thoughtful. No student athlete will be allowed to return to play unless the doctors feel 100% okay that it's safe for them to return to play.
Visiting with Mack Rhoades, Baylor's Director of Athletics, on this week's Sic Em Podcast. Mack mentioned the +1, the non-conference opponent that Baylor has set. We'll talk about that after a short break. Some may refer to it as the Kim Mulkey Bowl. We'll talk more about that when we come back on this week's Sic Em Podcast.
The big summer clearance event is still underway at Allen Samuels in Waco. Now update your essential transportation needs with 0% financing and no payments for 90 days on almost everything in stock. Brand new Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cabs, ready to roll with 0 for 72 and no payments for 90 days. And Ram Tradesman Express Quad Cabs feature up to $8,500 in values. We'll save you thousands at your friend in the car business, Allen Samuels.
Relationships, community, home. Now more than ever, these are the things that we're holding fast to. Home should restore us from today and ready us for tomorrow. It's where stories are told and relationships are forged. Within those walls, memories are made, laughter is shared, and family is gathered around the table. For these reasons, we believe in home, and that right now, there is no better place to be. If you and your family are looking to buy or sell a home, head over to MagnoliaRealty.com. Magnolia is a proud sponsor of Baylor Athletics.
Now, back to the Sic Em Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat.
When I think of playing La Tech, I think of playing on defense against the play calling of Coach Holtz. It's the first thing that comes to mind. And so, I think the second would be just the athleticism of their their front. And so I think both of those present challenges. But when we get to that point, there, hopefully on the 12th, I'm gonna feel really good about our team.
You just heard from head football coach Dave Aranda. We had him on, John, 2 weeks ago now, and we, at the time weren't quite sure who that non-conference opponent was going to be, who we would end up opening the season with. But now it is confirmed, and we've just heard that scouting report from Coach Aranda, because we will be playing Louisiana Tech here at McLean Stadium on September 12th. So we are here with Athletic Director Mack Rhoades. We would like to hear from you. What went into that whole process of getting that narrowed down and finalized to where now all the Baylor fans, we know who we're starting the season with?
Yeah, it was a lot of maneuvering, as everybody knows, right? We were scheduled to play Louisiana Tech on the 2026, right? And now we're over opening conference play, and so we had two choices: Incarnate Word and La Tech, and the choice was made pretty easy for us when Incarnate Word and the conference, the Southland, decided, to postpone football. Right, they certainly gave the option of schools within the conference to play non-conference games in the fall, and Incarnate Word decided not to do that. So La Tech, we knew that La Tech had some maneuvering to do with their scheduling process within Conference USA, and it involved at least one other institution. One other institution had to make a move and adjust their schedule, and so grateful for Tommy McClellan, their athletic director. He's just great people, terrific person, and we're glad that we're able to work it out. We really wanted to play La Tech. There was probably a couple days, moments where we weren't sure that was going to happen, right? And then, losing Incarnate Word. So we had a couple backups in case it didn't come through, but I think we feel really, really good about that game. And, I haven't looked at all of the non-conference games, and, certainly Big 12, I've seen those, but just other conferences. But I do think, just given, La Tech, Skip Holtz, Coach Holtz has done a great job there. They were in a bowl game, last year. I think it certainly could be one of the better matchups on that Saturday.
Yeah, it is a team that was 10-3 last year, tied for their division lead and won the Independence Bowl, a big win for them. So we're not doing Coach Aranda any favors here. I mean, that's a tough opening opponent, but he said this week, that's fine. That will help his team get better and be better when they start conference 2 weeks after that.
Well, it's a good answer.
That's what you want to hear.
Right. And, one of the first things that I did was I asked Jeremiah, I said, Jeremiah, see if La Tech went through a spring training, right? Went through spring practice, I should say. And I will be completely honest. Jeremiah asked the question, and La Tech did not start spring ball or go through spring practice. So as an athletic director, I felt a lot better about moving forward. And, because it's, again, we've talked about it, it's a lot to manage. First-time head coach, COVID-19, right? Mm-hmm. New scheme, both sides of the ball, and no spring ball. So just wanted to be really, really careful before we went down that pathway.
And you mentioned it earlier, you feel confident that Louisiana Tech is going through protocols that would be satisfactory and acceptable for a Baylor non-conference opponent.
Yeah, they'll have to test the 3 times. I think one of the question marks, and has not been decided yet, is that test on Friday, and we may, the conference may here in the next several days decide that test will be with a third party, right? Won't be done institutional, and that third party will have to test that visiting team. So it may be where La Tech is not doing that third test that Friday themselves, but actually by a third party that the Big 12 develops a partnership with. So we'll wait to hear how that transpires here over the next couple of days.
Well, I know the Baylor family is very eager to have the boys back on the field, be playing at McLean. I'm sure I know for a fact we're going to dive into tickets and all of that stuff, 25% here in a minute. But before we move on from the Big 12 announcement, we do have other fall sports that have been affected by that announcement that came out last week, specifically volleyball and soccer. Can you kind of walk us through what that means for our Baylor programs there?
Yeah, so we're probably on pause here at least through Friday. We're waiting to hear back again. I mentioned it earlier, the NCAA on the eligibility piece. And it's probably a week ago they talked about, at minimum, this 50% rule. So, volleyball at 28 based on a regular season of 28. If you play in 14 or less, that would mean that it wouldn't count as a year of eligibility. Soccer, I believe it's 20, so 10 or less, right? Football, even though we're playing just 10, it's based on what we would be playing or should be playing 12. So if a football student athlete plays in 6 or less, it doesn't count, right? And the rule before has been 4 for football, 30% for both of those sports. And so we're waiting to hear to see what the NCAA does. If it stays at that 50%, we'll wait to see what they or where they land. Again, if they go with, hey, this year it doesn't matter. You can play on all of the games and you're still going to get an additional year. It may change our thinking and our philosophy. Right now, we're probably headed down a pathway where fall sports will play their regular season, conference only. I think soccer, that's 9 conference matches. We had decided not to play a conference tournament at the end for soccer, which they traditionally have because of cost savings, but maybe we bring that back, right, because of the fall NCAA championships, as President Emmer tweeted out would be, moved potentially to the spring. Volleyball would play something less than 14. And so hopefully we have some clarity on Friday or shortly thereafter what that season looks like. Are we playing in the fall? And then, if we're playing in the fall, what kind of postseason can we develop to make sure it's a great student athlete experience? And, if you're not having postseason and you can only play in a limited number of games without exhausting eligibility, quite frankly, a student athlete and even a coach might say, hey, I'm not sure it's worth you or that particular team playing, this year if it's going to, again, use up a year of eligibility. So we're working through all of that, and again, hopefully clarity sometime Friday.
Well, and it's down the road a little further, but I know there are conversations going on about basketball, too, and what basketball might look like. I know, these could be really good seasons ahead for the Baylor men and the Baylor women.
Yeah, I mean, you sit there and you think about both of our teams, and, certainly will be, ranked at the very, very top. And, I think both teams within the top 4 at least. And so, selfishly, right, we want the seasons to happen. And, both teams got such great student athletes, too. And so you want to see them play, not just because they're really good, but because they're just great young men and women. And so how we navigate this, right? And, you think about if we're saying football, we have to have this mandated testing protocol for the visiting team, for the non-conference team. Let me probably rephrase that, the non-conference team, right? Well, think about all the non-conference games that you have in basketball, right? So how do we do that, and what's the right formula? And so that's the conversation that, we're beginning to have with so many non-conference, do we get to a point where we just limit it to conference only for the basketballs, or do we come up with something different, for non-conference where we've got some pods and we've got 4 teams and they're playing somewhat in a bubble and they've all been tested, and so there's a lot to think about how we do that. There's been a lot of different conversations in terms of when do you start the season, how do you start it, conference only, non-conference, but pods only. So a lot to be determined still, and again, just hopeful that we can play.
Hopeful, key word there. And the great thing is that no matter which way you look at it, it's always putting the student athlete and what's best for them first and foremost. And after the break, we're going to talk about putting what's best for all of our Baylor fans at the point of the priority when we talk about ticketing and all of that. So don't go away. We'll be right back with the Sic Em Podcast.
If you need a trailer, Flat Rock Trailers has got you covered. From light-duty single-axle utility trailers to the Big Tex tandem duals. We also carry a full line of enclosed cargo trailers. Need a motorcycle trailer? We've got them. Need a dump trailer? We've got the largest selection in the state. Oilfield trailers? We carry a full line of Big Tex trailers to handle all your needs. Trailer repairs? We repair all makes and models. We'll even rent you a trailer if you need to use one for a day. Flat Rock Trailers, your #1 source for all your trailer needs. Find us at flatrocktrailers.com.
TNG can, and here's why.
To say my wife and I have a lot to clean is an understatement. So we go to TNG Chemical, where the pros know what cleaning solutions to use and give us detailed instructions on exactly how to use them. We never got that kind of advice from any other stores. And the prices at TNG are great. From general household cleaners to odor control solutions for our pets. We go to TNG Chemical and Supply. That's why.
TNG Chemical and Supply. That's why.
Bentwood Realty is a full-service real estate firm with more than 70 high-achieving agents who desire to make a positive impact in their local communities. Their agents stay actively involved in all buying, selling, and investing real estate transactions to make sure their clients receive the utmost level of service. Established in 2011 by brokers Kim Galvan and Rick Hines, both proud Baylor alumni. Call Bentwood Realty today, 254-300-4800. They're at 601 Lake Air Drive in Waco and BentwoodRealty.com. Continuing with our guest this week, Baylor's Director of Athletics and Vice President Mack Rhoades on the Sic Em Podcast. It's brought to you by Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Subscribe, download, and you can find our podcast wherever you consume your podcast, on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you normally go. That's where you'll find our Sic Em Podcast. And Mack, as Brooke mentioned prior to the short break, a big question in a lot of fans' minds is ticketing. And I think folks understand that this is such a unique situation and hopefully a one-year situation. We don't know what the future holds, but that number of 25% continues to be out there right now with the information we have today. Is that what it looks like, 25% capacity at McLean Stadium?
Yeah, certainly in the General Bowl, the 25% capacity is where we're headed. It's where we'll start. Certainly, hopefully no less than that, but that's our plan. And if things somehow trend positively, maybe the ability to increase that as the year goes on. But that certainly remains to be seen. And I just hats off to Henry Howard and Drew Pittman in terms of just Matt Johnson in ticketing, and Cody Gogler in the Baylor Bear Foundation, and others. I'm sure I'm leaving some people out, but just a complete team effort on how you do this, right? And how do you space out the different groups and make sure that we can have fans in the stands and do that really, really safe. Obviously all of us would like to have more. But that's where we're going to start. That's what we believe is safe, at least at this point in time, and we'll see what happens.
Let's take it a little bit further, talk about the why and the when of, the ticketing process for this year moving forward. It's going to be single game tickets by Baylor Bear Foundation priority. Tell us a little bit about, what kind of went into that decision and when that process starts.
Yeah, not an easy decision, right? And, I think, one, it came down to we certainly couldn't accommodate all of our season ticket holders. Maybe the number of counts, but not the number of tickets that they had. And so, they've been loyal. They've been with us, many of them through thick and thin. And so, how do we be fair? How are we fair to them? And certainly the options that we gave them, some of the opt-out options to, full refund or roll over, right? Whatever payment you made to next year, or turn that payment into a tax-deductible gift. And they've been, again, tremendous. We sold approximately 20,000 season tickets, and probably the one year that we didn't want to get out ahead, right? But we did, right? We were really at a good place before COVID even started, and again, just hats off to our season ticket holders and Bear Foundation and season ticket office. And so just knowing that, it was going to be such a unique, and I think even as we were, going through this, we couldn't even determine how many games it was going to, how many games there were going to be. So how do we do this in maybe the most fair way? And so really going to the single game ticket model, right? And given our Bear Foundation, the folks that again have supported us over the years, the first opportunity to have that chance to buy the single game tickets, and via in that priority determined by their Baylor Bear Foundation ranking. And so again, we'll begin that process on the 24th, on Monday, and we'll see how we proceed and move forward. If you're a suite holder, obviously, if you're loge box, right, you retain those season tickets, and there's a reduced capacity for those premium areas. But again, I think the feedback that we've received so far has been positive, and I think people have been and grateful that people have been so understanding, and again, I think they realize and understand that this is probably the most fair way to do this.
Am I correct that one of the options is folks can, if they've bought season tickets for this year, if they're high on the priority list for the Bear Foundation, or really wherever they are, if they've paid for season tickets, one option is donating that money back to the department for this year, not extending it to next year. And a good number of people have done that, which is tremendously generous.
Yeah, absolutely. As of August 17th, right, we've had over $200,000 been donated back to the department. Wow. And again, our people are special. They really are. And, I'll share this with our Baylor family. Our goal for the Bear Foundation was $12 million for this fiscal year, this past fiscal year, which ended on May 31st. And as COVID, began and we started to see, just the economic impact, we adjusted our budget down to 11.3 by $700,000 down, and we ended up finishing at 12.7.
Wow.
And it's just it's a tribute to our donors. It's a tribute to our Bear Foundation, that just the attitude of we're not going to make excuses. We're going to continue to just work hard, and again, it just seems like the harder our Bear Foundation works, the more our donors respond, and truly grateful to them. That swing, and I'll be honest, that swing, continues to allow us through a hard economic time to provide, the services to our student athletes at an elite level. And when we have had to make adjustments to our budget through this period of time, that is one area that we haven't had to adjust. That we are continuing to deliver all of the services that we have for our student athletes, and that's directly because of our Bear Foundation members, and so grateful to them. And we'll this is going to be a different year, right? It's not going to be a normal year, but whatever it is, right? We're going to make the most of it, and we're going to be positive. We're going to be grateful for it, and I think most of all, just again, just the people that Baylor, the Baylor family is it's a special group of people.
Relationships, community, home. Now more than ever, these are the things that we're holding fast to. Home should restore us from today and ready us for tomorrow. It's where stories are told and relationships are forged. Within those walls, memories are made, laughter is shared, and family is gathered around the table. For these reasons, we believe in home, and that right now, there is no better place to be. If you and your family are looking to buy or sell a home, head over to MagnoliaRealty.com. Magnolia is a proud sponsor of Baylor Athletics.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
You're listening to the Sic Em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. Here again are Brooke Bednarz and John Morris.
We are here with Athletic Director Mack Rhoades. We just talked about the Baylor family and truly how much they have helped us and stepped up to, just help us through this time as everyone's staying flexible, and we're kind of dealing with the 25% and what that looks like and tickets and all of that. But before we let you go, we do have to talk about the students. They are moving into campus. They are getting ready to go to classes starting next week. John and I hosted a welcome ceremony for all the incoming freshmen, and I can tell you they are excited to be a part of the Baylor family. And there is tickets allotted for students specifically. So kind of fill us in. I know they are very eager to hear what that's going to look like starting September 12th when we host La Tech.
Well, first, I just remember back to last season, and our students were tremendous. I mean, just tremendous. Came out in full force and just provided such great energy for McLean Stadium and for our football team, and just again thankful to them. And as we go into this season, unfortunately, that 25% applies to them, and you look at that student section, which is about 8,000 seats, and so having to reduce that down to 25%, so there'll be 2,000 seats allotted there. And then what we decided to do was to take the berm, right, and the berm, seats normally about 2,000, and so 25% of that is 500. So we're able to at least capture another 500 seats for our students. So we'll be able to allocate about 2,500 per each game, and certainly wish we could do more, but the 25% rule applies to them as well. So, 2,500 students in McLean Stadium can make a lot of noise, and we'll expect them to do that.
Look forward to that, and glad the students are a part of it. I mean, there was one model that had zero fans, in the stands, and so at 25%, chance for fans and students to make an impact at McLean Stadium.
Yeah, it is, and again, grateful for what you have, and there will be some college football games that kick off that will have zero fans in the stands, and so grateful that we have the opportunity to have 25%, and again, hopefully, you never know as the season continues that we can grow that to even a higher percentage.
Let me ask you this, and if it's not a fair question, we'll edit it out. But what keeps you up at night? What are your main concerns? I mean, I think we're headed down a really good path. Hope that continues. But what is it that maybe you're most concerned about as we hit the start of the fall semester?
It's a great question. Probably just making sure that we continue to just put our student athletes' health and safety primary at the forefront, but also our staff in their mental health. I think about everything that our student athletes are going through and the uncertainty and the change, and that takes a toll mentally, right? But it's also takes a toll on your staff, and whether it's health and wellness and it's facilities and it's our equipment people that just their jobs have been doubled because of all of the precautions that you have to take because of COVID, right? And then you have staff members that had structure and again used to come to the office and being social, and that's been taken away. And so just worrying about the well-being of our people, that keeps me up, and it's a constant just a revolving, just like both of you, right? It's a revolving prayer that we all have for our people, and just making sure that they're okay and that they're getting through this, and each and every one of them has their own particular individual circumstance, right? And just that they're okay, and at some point in time we'll get to the other end of this, and want to make sure that when we do, our people aren't broken, that they're in a good place spiritually, good place mentally. So that's what keeps me up at night.
Well, I think we are all in agreement that we are in good hands with you and your leadership guiding us through this. And we want to thank you for your time today and explaining all of everything that went into the current situation that we're all in and where we are today. So thank you for your time.
Brooke, thank you. And John, thank you. Appreciate you both.
All right, with Mack Rhoades, Baylor's Vice President and Director of Athletics, that's this week's Sic Em Podcast. We appreciate Mack and his time, and we'll be back next week with another edition of the Sic Em Podcast.
You've been listening to the Sic Em Podcast, presented by your friend in the car business, Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco. Online at AlanSamuelsDCJ.com. The Sic Em Podcast has been a production of Baylor Athletics.